Well, welcome everybody. It's lovely to see you, and I hope that you will find this useful. Um, it's is it. Oh, there we go. Yes. I mean, what I think teachers really like to know is what they have to teach, how to teach it well, and how to support the children who struggle. And that's what I hope to do today. And I think it's important that we realize that an alphabetic code. And when you deal with code, it's important to realize that you've got to do it in step-by-step pieces. And actually, if a child misses some pieces out, it then can go seriously wrong. So very much the case that we keep in mind when you're teaching this code, and in English, the code works on the single sound, the single phoneme. So every sound in a word has a letter or letters that represent that sound. And not all languages work that way, but English does. And have a look at how complicated it is. This is from the Phonics Handbook. And you can see here exactly, each letter sound doesn't have one way of being represented. There's sometimes 10 or more ways of being represented. That is a huge amount of learning for children. Luckily, 75 letter sound correspondences that we teach in the first year is usually enough for reading, and then gradually for spelling, others come into being taught. So bear in mind, it is a code all the time. A bit like maths is a code that has to be carefully taught. So does the alphabetic code. Here you see. To make the code more difficult, we have the problem that we have 26 letters, but only, and there's 44 sounds. So that means that some sounds have to be represented by more than one letter. So sometimes we have 2 letters to represent a sound, sometimes 3, and sometimes 4. So, complicated. And there's not just one. So here we have the OA making the oak, the O sound as in oak. And here we have the split digraph, O hop over E, another O sound, and the OW, like in slow. And these are the most common ones. And if only it stuck to that, it would be a lot more helpful. But no, look, we have other ways. Sometimes it's just the letter O itself. Nearly always says O, but in these few words it says O. Sometimes it's OE, says the O. Not many of them. OUGH, there's your 4 letters, like in do and though. The EAU, well, this will be influenced from France and when we were invaded. So for plateau and bureau, the OUL, like in soul and mold. The EW, like in so, well, EW is nearly always U or oo, but here it is O, just to make it more difficult. And OH, like in O, when you exclaim something, and AU as in mauve. So, I mean, what a code, it's dreadful. But if you keep it down to the simple aspects, so in the first term, what you want them to do is to master these 42 letter sounds on the right-hand side, and not just know them, but how to work out words that use them. And as you're teaching them how to use them as well, with lots of blending. You need them to know how to form those alphabet letters correctly, with the correct formation and holding their pencil correctly. You need to make sure that for writing, they might know the word they want to write, but they've got to be taught to hear the sounds in the words and then to put letters for those sounds, a letter or letters. But look, you see, when you've got knowledge of those 42 letter sounds, you can have 1,900 words to be used for decoding. And that's a lot of words. And I can't tell you enough how many times I need to say, the more blending a child does, the easier it is for them. Now, some will do it just like that, and you hardly need to teach them, but the others need plenty of practice with it. But they can all do it. Every child, if a child can speak, a child can then blend. It's as simple as that. And here we have the 3 ways that we do it in Jolly Phonics. There's the handbook, which many people are familiar with photocopiable worksheets. Then we have the teacher's book and pupil books. And the reason for these was that people preferred to have pupil books and not print the photocopiable worksheets. And of course, we're up to date with modern whiteboard software called Jolly Classroom. So they all teach exactly the same. They all do the job for you. It's a matter of you choosing what you want to use. A lot of people are starting to use Jolly Classroom and use the pupil books that go with that. But the handbook still does the trick very nicely. So you have your first day of teaching the children. You introduce the first letter sound and you cover the basic skills that they're going to need. And the better you can teach it, the fewer children who will need support later on. And here we introduce the letter sound through a story, and into the story comes the sound, so they then hear that sound. There is an action linked to it, so for they wiggle their hand like the snake. And in the picture, there are lots of objects that have that sound in them, so you can speak about the words with the sound in them. Then we can teach them how to form the letter by looking at it, following the line, going over it, doing it in the air, getting a good pencil grip and trying to write it. We can't do blending, of course, because we haven't got enough letter sounds, but we can do auditory blending, and that is tuning the children in to blend by themselves. So you might say, look, can you see the d or g? And some children will hear that that's dog, and they'll put their hands up and call it out. And others will be a bit bewildered, but you're tuning them in, and they'll gradually get there. So where is the B-E? And again, another chat, some more children will hear it. So that's your auditory blending. You're trying to get the children to hear the word when you say the sounds. And in the end, you hope that they'll say the sounds and get it themselves. That's where you're aiming for. Segmenting, listening for the sounds. I mean, ideally, they want to know that if you want to write dog, you've got to be able to hear D or G. You can't do that in the beginning, so we just listen. Can you hear a S sound in this word? Snake. And they usually say yes. And then you say sun. And they usually say yes. And then you say dog. And a lot of them will say yes as well, but some of them will hear that there's no S there at all. So you're tuning them in. And that's what you're going to be doing with all the lessons that introduce the letter sounds, making sure that their auditory skills are good enough for cracking the code. So first letter sound taught, the next day we revise it. What was it? You hold it up, the letter, and they say S. And then you go into a new story. It's about the family having a picnic, and the ants go up the girl's arm, and she looks at those ants, she screams out, ah! And the ants go up and down the arm. That's the action. So the same things, the formation of the letter, you show what the letter is, and the children have to say ah when they see it to start off with. The formation, they get it correctly. If you can get them to form it with their finger in the air, that's very good. Auditory blending again, you know, can you see the ache? And hopefully get cake. And then the identifying of the sounds in words, you know, so can you hear an ah in ant? Is there an ah in dad? You might hear that, so it's in the middle. So again, tuning them in carefully. So the idea is that they should know this, and now they've got the ah. And then the next day, more revision, 2 letter sounds to be revised, and how to write them and do them on the board. And then you tell the new story of how the children are playing tennis, and the ball goes from racket to racket, and the teddy's looking, and they go t, 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 or the audience watching the tennis match, t, t, t. And the children then have to see that this is the t letter, and you tell them that it's a bit taller than the other letters, and it goes down and round, and you have a stick across. So you show them exactly how it is. You do more work with the blending, auditory blending to start off with. Can you see that cat? And they might be able to see the cat in the background. So you're tuning them in. But of course, now they can actually do blending of words and segmenting and ready to write, really. Because I love this time, because this is sometimes when you can see the light dawn on the children. Reading and writing is something you work out. And I think that is extremely powerful and goes a long way to be the main reason that we have a lot of success with it. Now, here we've got the word sat, so you can put that on the board and you can say, right now, children, we're going to read this first word. I'm going to say the sounds first, and then we'll do it together. So watch me, and then I will go sat, sat. So I've demonstrated it. Now let's do it together. So we do it with the children. Sat, sat. And then you say, right, you can do it on your own now. And you point to the letters, and the children call out the sounds and then say the word. And this makes it as easy as possible for them to blend. And then you can do it with the word at as well. So you've got the two words, sat and at. So that's demonstrating how we work out words for reading. And then we need to work out words for writing. Now, in writing, you know the word you want to write. It might be sat, and you've got to be able to hear the sound. So what can you hear? Sat. S, s, at, s, at, sat. And so you can write it on the board and show them how the writing system works. Very, very powerful. And that gives them huge confidence. Very well worth doing. 2 words they can now read and work out for themselves. And when they've blended it a few times, it becomes known, and then they just say it. And that goes on for the next 3-letter sounds. So the I and the and the P. And by now you have more words are available for blending, and they can actually write more words by listening for the sounds and writing the letters. And this is my latest favorite book, because it is so useful. And you can see here on this first page, there's no words for the s and the a, but then we come to the t and you've got sat and at. And then we do the I, and you've got sit, it, and its. And it grows like topsy. Each time you introduce a new letter sound, more words become available. And that is so useful. So if you come into class and you need to, you're going to do a new letter sound, you can put some words on the board, or if you're revising the ones you've done already, put some words on the board. You've got your little book, you get it out, and it gives you a lot of information. Words that are suitable for blending, words suitable for segmenting and dictation. So the tools at your fingertips. And here's another way with blending. There's blending as a whole class with flashcards or on the board. But the snag with that is that the good ones call out the word rather quickly, and the weaker ones, they just sort of copy. So really you want to be quite observant to see who's not getting it, and perhaps have another session with them on their own. Or keep the others quiet and ask some of these not so good ones to do it, because once they're forced to try, they often find they can do it. And it's also useful, not just the flashcards, but to have them on little cards like this, or even a little list like this. so they can then practice with their partner or practice at home, whatever. If you do send anything home for practicing, the really important thing is to make sure that you never give anything to a child for them to practice if they can't do it in the classroom. The reason for sending it home is that they get the extra fluency. That's what you're after. So do really keep in mind that it's not just blending as a whole class. Each child perhaps must blend some words with a partner, or try and work some on their own, or with a helper in the classroom, whatever. And also, once they've blended it, if they can say it, if they know the word, they should say it straight away. We don't want them to think that reading is sounding out words. It is only for when you don't know the word. And dictation. Dictation is the most effective way of learning to read and write. For writing, of course, you call out the letter sounds and they have to write them. Well, that reinforces the learning. If they have to write it, it tends to go into the long-term memory and stay there much more effectively than if that you're just shown it. So the writing and the doing of it, the feeling of the shape, the following of the letters on the worksheets and so on. Develop the habit regularly of just calling out a few words. You know, you want to write hot, listen, hot, b-a-s. And so just developing that habit with the children, and they call it out with you. And sometimes, once they can do it, call out a word and they can write it on their whiteboards, or they can write it on paper. I like paper, of course, because you can be more accurate. And with the whiteboards, they spend their time rubbing out stuff and getting a pen all over them. And, you know, it's not nearly as efficient as on paper. But sometimes it's useful when they're all sitting on the carpet and they've got their little boards and you can see what they're doing. And really, right from the beginning, a teacher needs to think of who are going to be my struggling children, because after 2 weeks, you usually can see the ones that are going to have difficulty. These children just are not learning the letter sounds as well as the others. They may find blending more difficult, or they may be very slow to do it. And of course, if they don't know the letter sounds, well, then they can't do it at all. They might find it difficult to hear the sounds in words. And those are the things that you're going to be looking for. Who is it who can't do those things? Some children can learn 3 letter sounds a day quite easily, and other children struggle with 1 letter sound a day. So you have to identify them. And sometimes, if you find that there's too many and they're not picking it up, then put a revision day in and just slow it down a little bit. So long as when you doing your teaching, you never ask the children to try and read a word or work out a word if they haven't been taught the letter sounds. That's so important. So what kind of intervention, group work, would you do? Now, who's going to do it for a start? It could be the class teacher. So if you're lucky enough to have an assistant in the class, the assistant could watch over the others who've been given some work to do, and the class teacher could take the slow to start children. Or it could be the other way round, and the classroom assistant takes the slow to start children. Sometimes a parent comes into the classroom and the parent can help, or a parent at home can help, or even a buddy in the classroom. You know the children who just know them straight away. Every teacher knows that quite easily. But if you can buddy them up with a child that's struggling and ask that buddy to help them learn those letter sounds and keep it to a small amount, and that can be very effective too. So the secret of all intervention is short and frequent sessions. Doing something once a week is not enough. These children need a nibble each day if possible. there is research, and you ought to know that things, if you take on something, that it's going to work. And there is research into synthetic phonics, and I've put a link here. It's Dr. Marlene Grant's research, and she's an educational psychologist. And the results she got through teaching the children synthetic phonics from the beginning, and then intervention children after the first term with her. I would go earlier than that, but the first term, the results were remarkably good. So I do urge you to read that research. Very, very interesting to see how, and even she explains that, the children who've got special needs, how well they do, the children who've got, who are very poor and have live in a very poor area and don't get the help perhaps at home. All those children she's watching out for. Very interesting research to read. And early intervention is the most effective. So often we hear people waiting until they're, had 2 years of teaching, 2 years of failing, and then they think perhaps they'll do something, because they always kept hoping it would click. They will get there. They're just not ready to read yet and so on. This is not true. They just need more of the teaching, not less. And so the earlier you get in, the better. So check as soon as possible on the letter sound knowledge, and really recognize the ones who do not know those letter sounds and are slow to pick them up. Then identify. It's usually in a class, it's usually about 6 to 8 children, depending on the type of school. But nearly always, you get this group that come in as a class of about 30 or more, and it invariably is very much the same. You've got that little group who go so fast, you've got the middle ones who are good, steady workers, and then you've got the really difficult ones at the bottom. And so it seems to happen with every class. So identify them. And the secret is to make sure that you have synthetic phonics teaching in the classroom, strong synthetic phonics teaching, and also in your intervention group. Nothing different. The aim is to make sure that they can all crack the code. And here's a way to help you with your assessments. This is available on the Jolly Learning website. And here is the first one. It's after the first 3 groups of letter sounds have been taught, and you want to know which ones are known by the child and which are not. And then we have some words that are made up from using those letters, and not very common ones, so they're not likely to have picked them up. And so you can see quite easily how well they can work those words out. Then you've got on the assessment sheet here, you've got the dictation words. So you can dictate to the class a lot of words, and you can see who manages them. And then you can put your comments in. So you can record it all, how well they have done on this assessment sheet. And then you can decide who's going to go into what groups. Try and make your group. 3 or 4 is the best. Perhaps 5 in a group, but more than that, you lose the power of the teaching. And you can also see these phonic assessment sheets. There's a link there as well. So your main aim with the children, and actually in my experience, I found it the most difficult was to teach those letter sounds so they really know them. I found the blending not that difficult, the teaching them to hear the sounds in words. I only had one child that was really difficult, but the rest, and that child did catch up. It took a little bit of teaching, but the child did catch up. And that's the aim. The aim is to help them to keep up with the other children. So by getting in early and starting early. So in your little group, so perhaps you're 3 or 4 children around a desk, you can do your flashcard revision. You would want to sort of have a starting place. So usually they might know the single letter sounds up to the first digraph, the A. And then when the digraph starts, sometimes that's when it starts to go wrong. But you find out where it starts to go wrong with them and start teaching there. And then concentrate on the next two letter sounds, always the next two letter sounds, and helping them to take that on board. Dictation helps you enormously with this. As you dictate it, you can see how well they are doing, and you can watch and see if they're copying or not. So very powerful. A letter sound box is very, very useful. And there's a link here you can download it. And the idea is that as you teach it, you put it in. But of course, these are catching up. So just put in the box the letter sounds that they do know. And then as soon as possible, start adding the others in. And then this box goes home, and on the back is a word so as to help the parents understand what the sound is. Seek parental support. I like to tell them, I say, look, some children don't have such a good memory. Doesn't mean to say they're not intelligent, because I've known highly intelligent children have trouble with reading and remembering the letter sounds. So it's not linked to intelligence, but they don't learn so quickly. And if you can possibly do a little bit of help at home, that will help enormously. And so that's something that can go home for the parents to help them learn the letter sounds. If that's not possible, then get a buddy in the classroom to always go through that box with that child, reinforcing all the time, going through the ones they know pretty well, so they're always getting a lot right before you wallop them too hard with something that is too difficult. That is a secret with them. Keep them feeling that they're making progress. There's lots of activities that you can do with word blending. Auditory blending can be used for those, if they really are struggling to blend, then do more auditory blending activities. And here, if you've got some pictures of little objects like the bed and cat, if there's a child who's really struggling, do one-to-one, and then put two of those pictures in front of the child and say, well, what are the pictures? And hopefully you get bed and cat. And then you say, now listen carefully, which one is the cat? And I've never had a child who couldn't get that right. And so you do quite a few of those. And then once they're good at that, you can put 3 pictures there or 4 pictures. So you make it a little bit more difficult. And you're tuning them in to hear the word when you have said the sounds, because as soon as they can hear the word when you say the sounds, they are ready to do it themselves with the letter sounds and real words. Modeling the blending, we said, is all right for the class for about the first week. It just smooths it. It might be needed for the strugglers, but not often. Blending words, if you've just focused on two of the letter sounds that they're not so good at, then have some words ready for them so they do plenty of blending practice. And you can put a bit of competition into this, like out of the 3 children, who can say the word first? And you suddenly produce it, and they have to quickly work it out and call it out. And then you give it to them, and then you all count up at the end. If you're not keeping up with how these activities, they are all on my website, and I'll explain it a bit later. This essential blending practice is when it's well worth making these word blending boxes. I think we are going to get these. Chris Jolly has agreed to these being developed, so I think this will be coming along. But if it's not there yet, it's quite easy to make these. The instructions are on the website, and you've got a link there. But the great beauty is that you've got your box. If you want the box of words, you go to the group of the letter sounds, and then you see the color linked to the letter sound. You pick out that color with those words on, and then you've got words that can use those letter sounds. So useful. So if you've just done something with the A, Then this box that you can see there has yellow words, and you go to the yellow words in there, and then you put them in the middle, and they, as fast as possible, get them to blend them and work them out. And that's useful for the whole class as well. Put the words for on a table for a group who are doing blending practice, and get them to read the words to their friends. A good assessment is important, and you're aiming to fill those gaps in those assessment sheets. So if you know what you're up to, it makes it much easier. You know what you've got to go to next. And every session in the intervention should include something about letter sounds, something about blending words, segmenting, calling out the sounds in words, dictation, a little bit of dictation, and tricky words if you've covered them. So, and the secret is have short, quick sessions, usually quarter of an hour, between quarter of an hour and half an hour. That's get through lots of little bits, and I show it on the website so you can have a look at that. It's important to do this segmenting of the letter sounds. Just have 10 words written down and quickly go through them. So run, sit, it, and so on. Word building, here's another little activity. So just imagine this is a table, and there's a child at each side of the table. And then you call out a word, and the child who's got the letter sound for the first one has to put it in the middle, then the next one, then the next one. So if it's bed, the child has put the b there, another one's done the e, and now the last one's got to finish it off, the d, they'll have to put theirs up there. Then you blend the word and work it out. So word building, very, very important as well. So it makes a change to dictation, which is a very similar thing. An incentive, well, incentives are always good. Children love competing. And this is the way I used to do it. And people will have their own ways. But I would put every child's name at the top that was coming to my little group. And they knew it was time, and they knew that they have to come and sit down at the seat and show that they're ready, with no fussing. And if they do that, they get 3 little points, and I put 3 for them all. And then if somebody came along making a fuss and not just sitting down, because it's speed and quick and make it snappy is so important to keep them on task. And if they come and are making a fuss, then no points for you. And then if they win one of your little activities, well, 3 points for you, and you put them down for them. And then 2 points for the next one, 1 point for the third one, and so on. And, then they want to get their points. And at the end, you total and choose a winner. And the winner gets a star on their jumper, No great big praise. You don't have to overdo it, but just a little recognition, a star on their jumper. Well, you choose whatever you want. But and of course, actually, because they're young, you can actually cheat it so that that they win at different times. So you can be quite subtle there, and that's why you want to have them similar ability, so that it's not only one that wins. So, but useful. This is another useful one, and it needs to be in the Sassoon font. If you want to know about the Sassoon font, where you don't have an A like that, and the letter A like that, it's the round one. That's why we use the Sassoon font. If you have that, then the children can do this activity. And basically, you're putting a consonant and a vowel together. So you make a little list like this, and you have fa, fe, fi, fo, fa. So you're encouraging to snap them together, those, and chant it. So have lots like that. So chant it, ma, me, mi, mo, ma, pa, pe, pi, po, pa. So they have these strings to chant. And if they're getting good at that, then you put a blend at the front. Pra, pre, pre, pro, pra. You're speeding up the blending. You're getting fluency into that blending. And it's just tuning them in as well. And then you can put a digraph in the front. Cha, che, chi, cho, cha. So that encourages the fluency. It's worth putting the practice in there. And actually, I did have a child that found it very difficult to blend. And I did happen to have Professor Dale Willows, who was interested in what we were doing. She came over from Canada, and she was an educational psychologist as well. And I said, this little chap is causing me real difficulties. And I said, would you like to see what you think? And she, tested him and everything else. And she said, this little chap has got a huge, huge disadvantage. He doesn't remember, he can't hear what he has said after he's passed the first two letter sounds. So if he's got a word like fog, f, og, he can only remember the og at the end. His memory is so short that he can't retain enough for the word. She says it's very, very rare. She very rarely has this. So it was, very interesting. And but this type of thing did help him enormously. So and he did get there in the end. As he matured a little bit, his memory improved a bit, and he gradually got there. He was always going to have a little difficulty with memory because he's got such a poor memory. But he certainly came along, and he was able to hold his head up high and do reasonably well. Sometimes I put these on just little pieces of card and then turn them over, and then the children have to turn it over and say it straight away. If they go pe, you say, oh, okay, but I want you to say it straight away. Pe, lop, na, fro, tha. So that way you're speeding them up enormously. And of course, you can reward them how many little points you want to. Again, teaching writing through dictation is so, so powerful. And teaching writing really well does give enormous help for reading as well as writing. And the two going together is so important. So in dictation, dictate a few letter sounds. Not a lot, it's just a few. In the beginning, when you first started with the whole class, you should do dictation. The whole class, it's a bit of a mess and everything, but they do get used to it. And they just come to the table and they just do it. And then little regular words that they should be able to write. And then when you get a bit better, a phrase. And then when they've learned a tricky word or two, you can start sentences. They're all examples in this word bank book. And, when you have your little decodable phrases and sentences, you can give them that practice, and you can give it for homework as well, but only when they can do it. That is the secret of homework, and only a little bit. So you might have 10 words for them to read, to take home, or 3 sentences if they've got to that stage, or 3 phrases, or whatever. You adjust it to how able they are. I have on the website, you can download these. If they know the 42 letter sounds and the first 10 tricky words, well, I can make little sentences for them to read. So you can put them down on the table and they can practice. So it's always a matter of doing the right thing at the right time. If they haven't got the 42 letter sounds, well, you make your little phrases and do it earlier, and only use the letter sounds that they do know. But they like it, because there's a bit of humor about it. Can a fish sing a song, and there's a bit of comprehension there. So you say, can a fish? And so there's a bit of a laugh about it as well. And these are available on my website. I think they're on the Jolly website as well. Dictation homework. When I started dictation homework, and it was only with the children who could do it, and they didn't have to, it was a treat. And they would take their 3 sentences home, and the parents would call them out, the 3 sentences, and then they bring it back, and as soon as possible, usually for that next day, I give them, a star and well done, and the next 3 sentences. And it made such a difference to their ability to write and read. Here you can see, this is from the Phonics Handbook, the first 2 words and phrases, and the sentences up here are from my website. So you've got material available, so you can go and find the sentences on my website with this link here. And this is what you get after 7 months. If you've got children who speak English at home, it's a different kettle of fish if they haven't got the English, but they can do retelling of little stories that you've taught and so on. They're quite capable. That we know, research says that the children who haven't got English are just as able to learn the letter sounds. They are just as able to work out the words. They may not understand them, but they're just as able to work them out. And they're just as able to hear the sounds in words. So they can do those 3 skills. What they don't have is the vocabulary and the experience of the language. So that has to be taught at the same time. But by doing the 2 at the same time, it comes together and it helps. The teaching of the reading and writing helps them with the language, and of course helps every child. The better they are at reading, the more they can develop their language skills. So this is typical after 7 months, but I would be aiming for this even with the slow to start by the end of the year. So, have high expectations. Make sure that you only teach those basic skills. Don't start in your little intervention getting reading books out and wanting them to read books and so on. Just speed up the blending, speed up the segmenting, speed up the knowledge of the letter sounds, and deal with a few tricky words. And keep doing that. Of course, during the day in the class, you will have to listen to the children read their books. They can't all do it, but you have to do the best you can, depending on how much help you have or how much time and so on. But the attention needs to go to the ones who struggle, really. This is the type of handwriting I managed to get out of the children after they'd had 5 terms in school. And if you want to see, usually, everybody can show some nice handwriting or some good independent writing from a child in the class. But to show the whole class is very different. And if you click on this link or follow this link, you can then see the whole class. With a video that I took of all the pieces of work. The last 3 on the video are the weakest ones, and the very last one is a really poor one. So I could say we didn't do well with that little chappie, but he will get there. But memory was a huge problem with him. But the other 2, they're a bit wobbly, but they will get there. So if you want to know more about the teaching, there's the Jolly Phonics online course. Of course, you have to pay for that, but it teaches a huge amount. But it's a serious study. You have to do 20 hours, prepare to put 20 hours of studying in about the Jolly Phonics. And it's sort of, monitored and checked on, and is well worth doing if you can manage that. The link is there for you, and you can see the link on the Jolly Learning website as well. But this is my website, and I will make it live now. And here, I think in a minute, you should be able to see it. I hope you can see it. Here, it's free. You can go on it just whenever you want. It has been now adapted, and I'm still finishing it off a bit, adapted for use on a phone or for use on an iPad as well as on a computer. These videos up here have all the teaching videos, and the first lot of teaching is how to read and write, and I go through an overview and every single step in the stage of the teaching. And then each step.
Sue, I'm sorry,
Oh,
I'm not sure the website is currently live on screen. Could you please, maybe we could try sharing again?
Well, that's very annoying of it, isn't it?
Yeah, technology, it's when...
Yeah, well, you know,
most...
where am I gone now? I've lost everything now. Let's see if I can. Let me. Sorry about this, folk. Well, I think. Can you take me back to the slide, and I'll just not do it live? That is so annoying.
Yeah, we currently have the last slide showing in the.
Is it? Well, how can you make it so I can see it?
It's just the.
Yes, I can.
Yep.
Well, it's you can see the headings at the top there. If you go to films, you will see the downloads, and the first lot is teaching children to read and write, and you can see step 1, step 2, step 3, and each step is cut into different parts, so it will give you all the information you want. You will find that there's a transcript, so if you don't want to listen to me, you can read it. The reason I made it videos was because we have to say the sounds, and it's very difficult for people to read the sounds. There are principles for that. So you can also go to help with reading and writing problems. If you go to preventing reading and writing problems, you will be able to see lots of guidance and a lot of information about what I've been talking about. You can see how I got into it. There's lots of resources that you can download and use. So I do recommend that you have a look at the website, and it's free, and you can learn a lot. I put everything I learned from my years, and I got into this, as many of you know, because I just happened to be in a school that changed its way to teaching like this. And I was the one that actually loved it the most, I think. It was so effective. We all found it very, very effective. And I started the actions and the sort of multi-sensory side to it. And my colleague Sarah Wernham joined me, and that was the start of our Jolly Phonics, because one day I met Chris Jolly. And this is why I think it's very important that the materials are all created by us experienced teachers. And not just experience, but we have evidence of effectiveness. So when we put this teaching in, we saw such huge improvements. And that's what other people see when they do the teaching. And of course, it's obvious in hindsight, it is a code. And if you're going to learn a code, you've got to learn it well. This idea that you can memorize words, as soon as you start to do that, you make it so difficult for some children, they never become readers. So it is so important to crack the code. And the good children, even if nobody teaches them, they get there. But only good teachers can teach them to crack all the children to crack the code, and this Jolly Phonics does it well. So do go there, and perhaps we have some questions from people. I hope it's been clear.
Thank you so much, Sue. This was a wonderful presentation, and we can see the chat. And so there are actually a few good questions. There are more than a few good questions.
Okay.
Perhaps we can start with.
One
of the questions, we actually have a few of these. So the struggling students have a hard time distinguishing the vowel sounds. So it's something with the hearing, so they cannot actually hear the sounds. What could be done in this case?
Well, pronunciation of vowels is very interesting because I went to New Zealand and the way they pronounce their vowels, I struggled to sort of master it. You know, it's very different. But if the teacher can say the vowel sounds, and you do enough practice of blending, segmenting, and enough teaching, they will all be able to hear those vowel sounds. Just more of this, you know, listen. You want to hear the word hat, listen, at, and they will get there. If you say, oh, they're not getting it, I'll do something else, then and try and learn whole words, then you're going down the wrong route. They will never get there if you go down that route. But you know, if they can speak, because when a baby is learning to speak, they babble in sounds, and then they learn to put their sounds together and pronounce words, and they can do that. So they can, or if they can speak, or if they can understand the language, they might have a very speech impediment of some sort. But if they can understand what you're saying, then they'll be able to identify the sounds in words. And the vowels as well, no problem.
Moving on to the next question, Paramjit is asking, there's a student in the class at the time of dictation, she used to guess the beginnings and the end sounds of the word, but not the middle sound. So is there anything that...
Yes, you know, sometimes you offer an idea and people take it, so they do it all the time. I'm going off the idea of identifying at the beginning, at the end. It's all right, right at the very beginning, just to show them that the sound can be in different places. But on the whole, after the first week, always listen for the sounds one after the other. So if you know, so it's the rat, at, because that's how the code is working. That's how you want the children, when they come to want to write a word, they want to listen for the first sound, the next one, the next one, the next one, and so on. They roll along. So don't do much of this hearing at the beginning, hear it at the front, at the end, hear it in the middle. It's harder than just going straight along the line.
This is another question that keeps cropping up. Sue, do you have any advice for helping children with learning disabilities through online sessions?
Well, in the COVID troubles, a lot of teachers did online training, and it's the same thing. Basically, you're still speaking to the children or the child. You're still encouraging them to listen for the sounds, still encouraging them to learn the letter sounds and so on. In fact, it's ideal way, if you can't actually be there, it's an absolutely perfect way of teaching, really. And many teachers found that out during the pandemic. So yes, you can. I think it's more difficult because you can see I'm struggling to get my finger in the right place. And the teachers that do it much more than I do it will get used to that. But you know, it is a bit more tricky.
What about children who know the separate sounds, but blending just doesn't happen for them, doesn't come easily for them?
That again is because the teacher hasn't done enough blending with them. They might have watched the others while she was teaching the whole class and they didn't really join in. You have to isolate them and see the ones that aren't and give them perhaps a bit of one-to-one or in the little groups. But that they do need to be identified. And you do need to have good discipline in that if you're going to have some children just rolling about and not paying attention, and you know, if you're going to have some speak over you when you're speaking and things like this, then you've got to learn better teaching techniques. And if a child starts to speak out of turn, you absolutely make a no of it. You know, absolutely stop talking. I'm not going to speak when you're speaking. Don't be so rude. You know, they have to learn to be obedient and pay attention. But a teacher has to understand that you have to keep jumping from activity to activity or different points and not keep the children on one thing too long. If you start to see them wriggle, go to something a little different, make it different, bring somebody out, make a slight change. That is important too.
Does the Jolly phonics approach, would learning the letter sounds be different for non-native speakers? Or
no, the research says they can learn them just as well as the other children. The real problem with pronunciation is for teachers who are not, have English as a first language in a country. And if they don't come to those letter sounds that are in English at a young age, they often cannot pronounce them. So, which is why you get these strong accents. The Chinese can't say certain sounds, and the English they can't do the clicking tongue of the Africans, and But every child can say a baby can say all the sounds that any language has. But as you get older, your ability to do this diminishes. So, and then if you get to adults, sometimes you cannot change it. So if you cannot say that sound, you never will. Once you've got to adulthood, it's like the throat has matured, and you just can't do it. So the difficulty will be for the teacher who can't say all the sounds is to make sure the children listen to perhaps the songs that have the sounds or something else that has the sound, and getting the children to copy them. It's just the reality of what happens, and that's why you've got these accents.
There's an interesting question. Is there any advice for children with good reading skills but poor segmenting skills?
Poor
segmenting skills.
Oh, segment. So they can read. Well, they just haven't.
They can read, but they cannot segment.
But they just haven't been taught enough. You need to do the segmenting right from the beginning, and you need to do the blending right from the beginning. The blending, as soon as you've got 3 letters, you're off, and do lots of blending and lots of this segmenting, and not just the whole class, but make sure. Sometimes you might have a little row of the people from green table or whatever. Line up before you go out to play, and then you ask them to segment something or other, and off they go. And it will just tell you who's doing it well and who's not. And it's just extra attention to it.
And the word bank, what level does the word bank book go up to? And
it's for the first year, so it goes up to the 75 odd letter sound correspondences that we cover.
So Ali is asking, usually the most difficult sounds for young children are the words that involve the hard TH, soft TH, CH, SH, and G. What would you advise for?
They're not difficult for the children. They may be difficult for the teacher. But the teacher may not be so confident because, as I say, if that teacher hasn't experienced those sounds and speaking English words from an early age, they will struggle. It is more difficult.
Rachel's asking, Rachel would be interested in resources aimed at slightly older children struggling with digraphs.
But the same principles work. So you find out what letter sounds are known and what aren't known. You then give them extra practice to learn those ones that haven't been learnt so well, and you give them practice in blending and segmenting. You start right from the beginning. I've had children who've come in who are struggling with their reading. And I said, well, you can't read this book very easily. No wonder you're having difficulties. Look, we're not going to read books because books aren't fun if you can't read them easily. And so I'd take the book away and I would then sort of show them how to work words out. And then sometimes you see that light dawn. And I remember one boy in particular, he was a naughty little fellow. And I took the book away and said, look, I'm going to show you how to crack the code. Now, you like codes, don't you? And so, and he suddenly saw there was a light, you know, how it works. And after that, he was straightforward and he did learn. You know, he still was a little bit of a naughty boy, but he was much easier than he was before. So, no, it makes a big difference. And any child who is struggling, if you leave it too late, they become very difficult children. You know, that it's they're very unhappy. They feel that they're not very clever because they haven't learned what the others are learning. And that's so important to catch them before they get this terrible chip on their shoulder that they're not so good. So catch it early and tell them, oh, it's, you know, it's just that you don't remember. You know, or I haven't explained it well enough, you know, and just give them some confidence. But in the end, it's the amount of practice you do with them that counts.
The questions just keep on coming. There's actually many good questions. Unfortunately, we won't have time for all of them. So if we haven't answered your question, please visit our social media profiles, leave the questions. We'll be sure to get back to you with an answer. But we'll probably have time for a few more. Andrea has a good question. Are there techniques for children with limited spoken language skills, so single word language skills?
So are these with a speech problem? You know,
I believe so. There's no further detail in the question, but I believe this.
Can you say this question again? Then I'll think.
Are there techniques for children with limited spoken language, so single word language skills?
They can do the decoding and the encoding, and they can write words. And in the end, you have to. They will gradually, if it's English speaking in the class, they will gradually pick up the English. If there's not, then you have to do much more language development. We've got Jolly English, and that is very useful for developing the language skills. So it really is. There's no easy way, but the younger the child, the more programmed they are to pick up the language. And some, you know, in Spain, they now teach the children 40% in English, 40% of the time in English, which is enough with the learning of Jolly Phonics to pick up the reading and writing and to pick the language up. They do learn relatively quickly. Although again, with children, some will be so quick at picking up the language. A French girl came to stay with us and she had a little smattering of English. And by the time she went home after her 6 weeks with us, she'd forgotten French. So she just had the natural language skills and picked it up. So, you know, she picked up French again.
Nida is asking about teaching Jolly Phonics to very young learners, and if it is right to teach all letter sounds to a very young age group. So the age group we're talking about is actually between 1 and 2 years old, and between 2 and 4 years. Well, 2 and 4 is, but 1 and 2 is.
I mean, I haven't got experience with doing this, but I do know in Malaysia they often start at 2 and 3 years old. And they teach in much the same way, and they can pick it up. You know, they can't do. They're not physically strong enough necessarily for the pencil control, but the actual learning of the letter sounds. Of course, you've got to teach them in a much more young child-friendly way with lots of drama and wide gestures and goodness knows what. But the brain is remarkable. How it does, it's like a sponge. It's at its most effective way of learning, at this young age. So I don't recommend it because I don't know enough about it. But I know our 4 to 5-year-olds, that they were all ready and they could do, could go ahead. So and I've been impressed with the trainers that actually teach these much younger ones. So yeah.
Yeah, this probably answers James's questions about introducing Jolly Phonics at nursery level, teaching younger children. So
Yeah. So it's and the secret is, of course, never to ask them to read a book before you've got them blending and fluently, and they know the letter sounds that are going to be used in that book. And so it's important to use your decodable readers when you do get to, and follow the instructions in the manuals. They're very structured step by step. So if your lessons follow what we've written in the manuals, then it will go very in a straightforward way. But never ask them to do something that you haven't taught them.
Thank you very much, Sue. And that is probably all we have time for today. As I said, if you have any more questions, please feel free to visit our website, visit
Theodore,
Sue's website.
Theodore, I've just realized what I didn't do. I didn't share the screen for the website.
for the website, I'll just pop in the link to the website into the chat. Also, there was a handout with all the links that our wonderful attendees have downloaded, and a lot of useful links there. I'll just copy the website link into the chat again, just so it's it's there. And thank you all very much for attending us live session, and we look forward to seeing you.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
And it's been good to be with you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.